our India's knowledge series video. We are reaching another milestone in our journey, which started as a time pause during the lockdown period. We are on video number 20, and in this video, we will be discussing the interim financial reporting as per Ind AS 34. As the name itself is suggesting, when an entity prepares financial statements for a period less than the full year, that is considered as an interim financial reporting. And what are the principles of preparing this interim financial reporting? What is the recognition measurement principles, and what is the important disclosure which an entity is required to provide as part of the reporting is what is our discussion today. And as we always welcome questions, clarifications, and your comments, please put them in our YouTube channel itself so that it can be answered for the benefit of all our subscribers. We have structured this discussion to understand what is the key principles relating to interim financial reports. That's the first thing which we are going to discuss. What are all the key definitions associated with Ind AS 34? We will discuss. What should be the form and content of interim financial report? Because the standard allows two possibilities, a full set of interim financial statement or a condensed set of interim financial statement. What should be the form and content of those two types of interim financial statement we will discuss as part of this video. What should be the recognition and measurement principles? Whether this standard gives a specific guidance or the standard says that go back to the respective standards and apply the principles there. And only for specific instances you come back here. So what is the prescription given in this standard? We will discuss. And what is the important disclosures which has to be included as part of the interim financial statement? Also we will have. And we will also try to make a simple comparison between AS 25 interim financial reporting and Ind AS 34 interim financial reporting. Friends, before we proceed, I should make a disclaimer here. I'm taking all the possible efforts to ensure that this presentation does not contain any errors or omissions. However, perfection is only led to the God, but not to the mankind. There is a possible error. There could be a possibility of errors or omissions. In case if you are identifying any such error, spotted any omissions, please send me the related note so that I will have a separate session on talking about the changes which has to be considered because of the inadvertent errors and mistakes crept in our presentation so far. What is the key principle with respect to interim financial reporting? The objective is to suggest what should be the minimum content of an interim financial reporting. That is the primary objective of this. And it also gives what are the principles of recognition and measurement of the interim financial results in a complete set of financial statement which is prepared for an interim period, or a condensed set of financial statement which is prepared for an interim period. Very clear principle. Only if an entity is required to prepare an interim financial statement or it voluntarily opts for preparing an interim financial statement, then only this standard will be applicable. If an entity is not required to prepare an interim financial report by law or regulations, or it is not opted to prepare an interim financial reports, in that case, this standard does not have any applicability to that reporting entity. It also says the key principle is that standard per se is not suggesting what is the frequency in which interim financial reports has to be published, whether it should be monthly, quarterly, half yearly. All those things are not part of this standards prescription. It simply says that if you prepare anything lesser than for one full year, follow the principles given in this particular standard. The form and content, the recognition and measurement principles, and the disclosure. The guidance will be as per this particular Ind AS 34. And accordingly, if you prepare quarterly results, apply Ind AS 34. If you are preparing half yearly results, apply Ind AS 34. If you have prepared only for 11 months for a specific purpose, apply Ind AS 34. Accordingly, with that key principles, let us move to the key definitions which we have to understood. Maybe you might have understood from my passing comment what you mean by an interim period. Interim period is any financial reporting period which is shorter than a full financial period. Suppose if I am saying full financial period is a 12 months financial statement, and in case I prepare a financial statement for less than 12 months, that is covered as an interim period. What is interim financial report? It contains maybe a complete set of financial statement prepared for the interim period, or it may be a condensed financial statement for an interim period. Again, an interim financial report may be a full-fledged financial statement or maybe a condensed financial statement. Let us understand what is complete set of financial statement. Let us also understand what is the condensed set of financial statement. But only primary point is that it is prepared for an interim period. That means it is prepared for a period lesser than or shorter than a full accounting period. That is what you have to keep it in your mind as far as the applicability of Ind AS 34. Understand what is the form and content of a complete set of interim financial report. What are all the items which has to be included? What are all the components which has to be included as part of the interim financial report? Because it's a complete set of interim financial report, it will consist of the form and content of the financial statement in accordance with Ind AS 1. Ind AS 1 is talking about presentation of financial statements, right? According to Ind AS. So Ind AS 1 should be followed in full, and in Indian scenario, we should also follow Schedule 3, Division 2 or Division 3 as applicable with respect to an entity preparing as per Ind AS 34 a complete set of financial statement. Suppose if the company or the reporting entity also prepares a consolidated financial statement for the interim period, it can prepare its standalone financial statement as well under Ind AS. So it doesn't say whether you are prohibited from preparing a standalone financial statement. Again, if you look into that, it creates a feeling as if standalone financial statements are not required under Ind AS 34. But since the guidelines are for preparing the financial statement under Ind AS 1 is part of the law, so to that extent, the standalone financial statement is the primary set of financial statement, and the secondary set of financial statement is when it prepares a consolidated financial statement. So interim financial statement, the principles given with respect to recognition, measurement, disclosure apply equally to a standalone financial statement as well as for a complete set of interim financial statement, which is a consolidated financial statement. Okay. What is the complete set of interim financial report? What is the component of that? It shall include balance sheet, statement of profit and loss, statement of changes in equity, statement of cash flows, notes comprising significant accounting policy. And of course, it should also have comparatives for the corresponding interim period of the previous year. So that should also be part of this. Whatever period for which you are preparing, you should also give that information for one period comparative has to be given. If you see this list of the components of a complete set of interim financial report, you will very clearly understood that because of the applicability of Ind AS 1 for a complete set of financial statement, whatever you are preparing for the annual financial statement will automatically be the components of interim complete set of financial statement, including the comparatives which you are supposed to give. Very simple to understand as far as the complete set of interim financial report. What could be the condensed set of interim financial report? What does it mean? Let us understand this. What it says is that a condensed balance sheet, a condensed statement of profit and loss, a condensed statement of changes in equity, a condensed statement of cash flows, and notes comprising significant accounting policy. What do you mean by condensed? Condensed, condensed. Nothing but instead of giving the complete detailed notes, you can simply give the balance sheet in the items which are, maybe for example, I will say, what is your current asset? What is your non-current asset? Can be the condensed form. You can have current liability, non-current liability, and equity as condensed form in the balance sheet. In the profit and loss account, you can give a condensed form of what is revenue from operations, what is the total expenses, what is profit before tax, what is the provision for tax. You are not giving a detailed information supported by the notes and accounts, which gives an elaborate guidance for every line item which is there on the balance sheet or P&L or in the statement of changes in equity. You can simply give a condensed mode having the broad heading of the balance sheet, broad heading of the profit and loss account, and broad headings of the statement of changes in equity, broad headings of your cash flows. For example, you can say cash flows from operating activities, cash flows from investing activities, cash flows from financial activities. What is your opening net cash generated during the period? What is the opening balance? What is the closing balance? You can give that simple process. That is what we say condensed. It's an abstract which has been given. Both are permitted. A full set of interim financial report is also permitted. A condensed set of interim financial report is also permitted. But what should be the content of the financial statement may be sometimes driven by the laws and regulations. In that case, that should also be considered in presenting your financial statement, whether it's condensed or full-fledged. If you see the component of interim financial report compared to the full set of interim financial report, I have not included the comparatives as part of the component. Whereas in the previous slide, I have included the comparatives also as part of the condensed set of interim financial report. Because in the paragraph when they are talking about the component of interim financial report, that particular item is missing or it is not there compared to the paragraph which is talking about a complete set of interim financial report as per Ind AS 34. Whether it means that comparatives need not be given if you are presenting a condensed set of financial report. Another paragraph which is talking about comparatives should be given. There it says whether it is full complete set of financial statement or condensed set of financial statement, comparative should be given. So that means even though that particular line is missing in the paragraph relating to the component of a condensed set of interim financial reporting, by means of another paragraph, it is specifically requiring comparatives to be given. Don't get carried away that comparatives is not required with respect to condensed set of interim financial report. What is the form and content of interim financial report? If an entity publishes a condensed financial statement, statement shall include headings and subtotals included in the most recent annual financial statement. For example, where I am saying the headings are non-current asset. What is the subtotal of the non-current asset? But if you are wanted to include within this, you wanted to show what is property, plant, equipment, what is that? You are permitted to do it because it is not prohibiting that a line item should not be included additionally than just giving the abstract. It allows you. So subtotal and the heading should be in accordance with how your annual financial statement has been prepared for the recent period. When I'm saying recent period, maybe the last audited financial statement for the full period. What are all the headings and subtotals? The same thing which you have to have it here. With respect to balance sheet, with respect to P&L, with respect to cash flow statement, with respect to statement of changes in equity. And what it says is that additional line items can be included if their omission would make the condensed interim financial statement misleading. So in simple terms, if putting an additional line item, you will get more information. If you are just putting a condensed information, sometimes the information may be misleading to the user when he is trying to understand the numbers. So additional line item is permitted to be included, and it should also have the present basic and diluted earnings per share for that period. You have to give the basic earnings per share as well as diluted earnings per share. How to calculate the basic earnings per share and diluted earnings per share, we have already discussed as part of Ind AS 33, where I have even taken a specific discussion about quarterly numbers and quarterly profitability, in which there is a contingency which has been incorporated with respect to opening of new branches, contingency reporting to profitability achievement, etc. We have considered. So please follow that example which has been discussed as part of our earlier video on Ind AS 33. Interestingly, when we are talking about the basic and diluted earnings per share, it is given for an interim period. When we are giving for an interim period, whether the earnings per share has to be annualized, because assuming that I'm doing it for a quarterly basis, whether I have to annualize and present the EPS, be cautious. EPS is the performance measure for that particular period to which the financial statements have been prepared and presented. So accordingly, annualization is not to be done. You have to present only without annualizing the EPS even for the interim period. So when I'm saying, because I'm talking about the condensed financial statement, EPS has to be given. Whether I can include some new line items when I'm presenting a full set of financial statement, definitely yes, because it goes with the respective accounting standard, especially Ind AS 1. Ind AS 1 permits additional line items can be added if it makes a relevant and reliable presentation and makes more information to the users of the financial statement. Similarly, the disclosure or presentation of basic and diluted earnings per share is a requirement. So that should also be part of even for completed set of financial statement. Don't get carried away. It is applicable only for condensed financial statement, because in this slide, we are talking about condensed financial statements. Let us have, as usual, some discussions on some case studies. This is an interesting question. Unaudited financial results are required to be prepared and presented under Clause 41 of Listing Agreement with the stock exchanges. This is with respect to listed companies who have a responsibility to publish unaudited quarterly financial statements, results, as well as half-yearly results depending upon what is the listed item. For example, if I have listed my equity shares, then I will be reporting quarterly results. When I have debt instruments, I have half-yearly reporting responsibility. Both the scenarios, it is for lesser than or shorter than the full reporting period. Whether that will be considered as an interim financial report as per Ind AS 34. What is your guess? It is not meeting the definition of interim financial reporting as per para 4 of India's 34. What is para 4 of India's 34 says? If it is an interim financial reporting, it should have the minimum component of the financial statement, full-fledged or condensed. You should have balance sheet or condensed balance sheet. You should have statement of profit and loss account or condensed financial profit and loss account. Statement of changes in equity or condensed statement of changes in equity. Cash flow statement, either full or condensed, depending upon what you have selected, and notes and accounts. But if you see the unaudited financial results, it is prepared in accordance with the format given by the listing agreement. And since the regulator has specifically required that to be done, what is required to what is the applicability of Ind AS 34? Ind AS 34 says it is not meeting the definition of interim financial reporting, so it is not considered as an interim financial reporting. However, the recognition measurement principles should be in accordance with Ind AS 34. Whatever you are doing with respect to recognition of an income or expenditure or any other uh, fair value changes, that should be in accordance with Ind AS 34 prescription. Disclosures and the presentation format will be in accordance with the listing agreement. So, interesting answer. Unaudited results published in accordance with the listing agreement is not an interim financial report because it is not meeting the definition of interim financial reporting as per para 4. But the recognition and measurement principles has to be there. Now let us ask a different question. Suppose unaudited results have been given, which is for the purposes of the reporting to listing agreement. But for preparing that, the entity prepares a full complete set of interim financial statement. Whether your answer will change, that whatever we are giving or disclosing as unaudited financial results will still be interim financial reporting. Again, the answer is no, because what we are disclosing is in accordance with the requirement of a regulator, but the financial statement which has been prepared as the backup for this, a complete set of interim financial statements, that will be considered as an interim financial statement. But the unaudited results or the audited results per se is not an interim financial statement, which is given as per the listing agreement. If the company gives along with that unaudited results a full-fledged financial statement, that complete set of financial statement is considered to be as part of your interim financial statement, Ind AS 34. The next question comes is, when I report an interim financial reporting, what should be the periods of comparatives which has to be included, or what are all the periods which has to be included? So it depends upon what is the component of the financial statement. For example, if I'm talking about a balance sheet, you have to give as at the end of the current reporting period and also for the comparative period as at the end of the immediately preceding financial period. It is not for the interim period, it is for the immediately preceding financial year. That is what you are supposed to give. For example, if I am giving for 30th June 2020, what I am supposed to give in the comparative period is not 30th June 20, but I should necessarily have comparative period as at 31st March 2019. Full period should be given. The question comes is how it will be comparable. The financial statements are always prepared, or the balance sheet, especially the balance sheet is always prepared or drawn up to a particular point of time, and accordingly, it shows the statement of affairs as on a particular date. As on a particular date, when you are making a comparison, what has happened in the current period, what has happened in the previous audited year, you can actually make an assessment. Suppose if the entity wanted to add one more column by saying that I will also provide the balance sheet for the end of the comparative interim period, you can give, because it is not uh, discouraged or it is not prohibited. But only thing is the annual period number should also be part of the presentation. So current year number, current period number, optionally you are giving comparative interim period of the previous year and also the full period number in the balance sheet. What happens with respect to statement of profit and loss account? So interim current period you have to give, assuming that we are in September 2019, we have to give for the quarter ending September 2019, and we should also give the cumulative year to date from 1st April to 30th September for the current reporting period should also be given. So the quarterly number plus the full number up to the year end date, up to the reporting period, year to date number of the reporting period. So up to 30th September should also be given. So 1st July to 30th September is a quarterly number, and 1st April to 30th September is the year to date number for the interim period. Similarly, your comparable should also be like that. So what is the comparable interim period performance P&L should be given. Similarly, comparable year to date number for the preceding financial year up to the interim period should be given. For example, when I'm saying 30th September 2019, current period will be 1/7/2019 to 30th September 2019. Comparative period will be 1/7/2018 to 30th September 2018. Cumulative year to date for the current period will be 1/4/2019 to 30th September 2019. And with respect to the comparative period, year to date number will be 1/4/2018 to 30th September 2019. Here you can ask why we are not giving the full annual number. Statement of profit and loss account is drawn for a period. If we are having an annual number, a user will get confused. He has to actually make an reassessment of if you have given for 6 months, what is expected to be for 12 months, and then he has to make a comparison. That will lead to a confusion. That is the reason why for statement of profit and loss account, it is for the period of the interim period as well as the year to date number with the corresponding numbers for the previous interim period, and the previous year to date number has to be given, not the annual audited number of the preceding year is required to be given. Similarly, when we are talking about statement of changes in equity, SOCE, cumulative for the financial year to date. So meaning is we are supposed to give not for the quarter, we have to give starting from the first date to the end date. That means 1st April 2019 to 30th September 2019, what is the movement in SOCE has to be given in the current period. Comparative will be for the same year to date number 1/4/2018 to 30th September 2018. What is cash flow? Cash flow, can it be given for a particular quarter? It is also like SOCE. It is drawn up to a year to date number. So 1st April 2019 to 30th September 2019 for the current interim period. And similarly, for the previous comparative period, it should be 1/4/2018 to 30th September 2018. When we are talking about 30th September 2019 and 30th September 2018, please bear it in mind. I have taken an example of an entity preparing an interim financial statement for the quarter ended 30th September 2019. What is the requirement? If you are talking about June 2019, then year to date number will be equivalent to first quarter. So accordingly, you need not even given the year to date number. First quarter, it is not required. Third quarter, you have to give. Fourth quarter, you have to give. Okay. So again, when I'm talking about quarterly numbers, you have to be a little careful whether what we are talking about is a correct understanding of this particular situation, for a simple reason. We are not talking about anything relating to a listed entity. You have to be little clear on what we are talking about. Okay. So now we move on to the next situation. What is the recognition and measurement principles which are given as per Ind AS 34 for calculating or presenting the interim financial numbers? Okay. So when we are talking about the interim financial numbers, the principle says either you prepare a full-fledged financial statement or full set of financial statement or condensed financial statement for the interim period. What you are supposed to give is to apply the accounting policies which you are applying for the annual period. You cannot apply a different accounting policy. So all the India standards which are applicable, which has been applied in the preparation of the annual financial statement, should be applied in preparation of the interim financial statements as well. So the recognition and measurement of each items of asset, liability, income or expenditure will be based on what is provided in the respective standards, and because the accounting policy is coming from the respective standards for the annual periods. Now, that's what we are saying. We have to apply, except one situation which we are saying, except if there is a change in accounting policy during the period, which might have been warranted because a standard might have been changed during the particular period. To that extent, you have to apply. Normally, an accounting standard will not be changed during a particular quarter. Uh, because the way in which these standards are issued, it normally starts with a particular accounting period, commencing on or after the accounting period, so and so. So accordingly, a new standard will not have an impact, but if the entity changes its accounting policy because of some reasons, if they believe that reliable presentation can be done, or they are early adopting an accounting standard which has been notified for the different period, even in voluntary adoption of a new accounting policy, they have to uh, apply the new accounting policy which they wanted to apply instead of the annual financial statement accounting policy. If there is a change in accounting policy, in all other cases, they have to follow the principles as given in the annual, whatever is applied consistently on the annual financial statement should be applied here as well. What is the frequency of the entities reporting shall not affect the measurement of its annual results? It's an interesting point. Whether you do it quarterly basis or half-yearly basis, or you are preparing for giving to a specific purposes for 10 months or 11 months or maybe 9 months, that doesn't impact the measurement principle. The recognition and measurement principles goes with a simple understanding as per Ind AS 34, which says that you have to apply the accounting policy as applied for the annual financial statement, except there is a change in accounting policy. So, because of that, what happens is the principles of recognizing assets, liabilities, income, expenses for the interim period will also be same as in the annual financial statement. Goes without saying. Now, there could be a possibility that certain industries may be cyclical industries, or certain revenues may be occurring, or certain expenses will be incurred occasionally or seasonally. For example, if I am talking about a sugar industry, the can, depending upon the availability of can, the crushing will be happening and the manufacturing will be happening at a seasonal level. Could be an example which we can consider. In that situation where the industry is a cyclical industry, or revenues are generated on an occasional basis or on a seasonal basis, what should be the measurement principle which has been given? It says not to be anticipated or deferred in the interim period, because it will not be appropriate at the end of the financial year. For example, for the particular quarter or the half year for which the interim financial statement has been prepared by the sugar industry, you have to actually consider what is the actual production, what is the actual revenue, what is the actual cost of production, what is the inventory valuation, what is the finance cost, what is the employee cost, and what is the tax relating to that. With respect to tax alone, we have a different consideration here in interim financial reporting. We will look into that particular aspect as well separately. So you should not anticipate first 2 quarters I don't have a crushing, but in the third quarter and fourth quarter I will be having crushing. And because of that, I am expecting a revenue of so much, maybe 10% or 20% more than the previous year. So that 10% and 20% I will apply, or seasonal, I will make a smoothing effect of taking what is the estimated annual number and take that as the revenue, and related expenses will be made a provision in the seasonal financial statement for the first quarter or second quarter or third quarter. Not permitted. You cannot anticipate. Similarly, if an expenditure has been incurred in that particular seasonal period, you cannot defer that, making a smoothing effect over the 4 quarters or 2.5 years, whatever interim period which you are saying. If it is incurred, recognize. If it is uh, accrued, recognize the income. You cannot anticipate an income and recognize. Similarly, you cannot anticipate and recognize and defer an expenditure which has been already incurred. The revenue which has been recognized has to be recognized when they occur, and similarly expenditure should also be accounted. The cost related to that is also accounted. That is what I am trying to say when we are talking about an uh, interim financial statement. And let us take some checkpoints. Consider some checkpoints for understanding how an income or expenditure or an asset or liability has to be recognized in the interim financial statement. If you see majority of the examples which I am going to apply, you will have a very simple clarity that it is nothing but the same accounting principles. Gratuity, you have to take an year to date number. If there is any specific events which has happened, like a lot of attrition which will be continuing on a long term basis, increment which has been given which will be sustained over a long term period, you have to adjust for significant market fluctuation during that period. Periodic plant maintenance activity, unless contracted, not to be taken into account. That's what it says. But when you are really looking into that periodical plant maintenance, you also check whether it is a major overhauling expenses qualified to be accounted as per Ind AS 16 property, plant and equipment. If so, amortization is permitted over the next cycle of the plant maintenance activity on a straight line basis. So you may be able to consider. So what is the periodic plant maintenance activity? If you are saying it's a plant maintenance activity, it's not a major overhauling, it is only a routine maintenance, then if it is incurred, you should not take into account. You cannot say, I'm going to do this major activity in September, and accordingly, I will anticipate that expenses and account it right from the first quarter to ensure that all the quarters have equal charge of the expenditure. Not possible unless it qualifies as per Ind AS 16 property, plant and equipment. Provision, the same estimate which you are supposed to do for the year end, the same criteria should be applied for making provision. No separate special criteria can be applied under Ind AS 34. Year end bonus, it's a legal obligation, and accordingly it's a reliable estimate. So when I'm saying bonus, bonus is, even though it's an annual bonus, it is for the period for which it is worked, and accordingly making a provision for the bonus in the quarterly period is because of the legal obligation. Suppose if you are saying there is a discretionary performance incentive which will be based on certain parameters which is met at the end of the period, in that case you have to see whether it gives a legal obligation or constructive obligation as per Ind AS 19 employee benefits. If it gives a legal obligation or constructive obligation, then you can accrue. If it does not give both, then you have to defer and recognize only when it is being accruing. Up to that period, you should not recognize. Warranty provision, every reporting period you have to review the estimate, because it's an estimate. Some new guidances might have come in based on the past trend. For example, I have provided a warranty 0.25% of my total uh, turnover, which was the trend in the last period. But during the current period, we have experienced that certain products becoming not okay. For example, you might have seen that some of the telecom companies have withdrawn certain batteries related issue, and that said, they have said that we will replace free of cost. Some of the laptop manufacturers have done that. Some of the car manufacturers have done a change. When that type of change is happening, you have to adjust the estimate for the new information which is available for that particular quarter. You cannot say that this is will also be spread over 4 periods. This is an issue relating to the current quarter, so you have to make a best estimate out of that. Expenditure which is relating for a period based, and naturally based on the yearly average, you can do on a straight line basis. Volume rebate. What is the year end level of volume which you will take? That year end volume has to be applied here, and you will have the volume rebate applied for the particular quarter. So, for example, if you're saying 1 million units has to be lifted by the customer, then only he is eligible for the volume rebate. But the term says he is entitled for the volume rebate right from the first unit which has been lifted by the customer. So that means if I'm deferring till such time he is going to achieve that 1 million, it is incorrect because the reported profits of the previous quarters are not having the cost, only having the revenue. So accordingly, it says that do your year-end estimate whether the customer will be entitled or will be able to claim volume rebate. If so, apply right from the first unit which has been lifted. And in case if at a subsequent period of time it is being very clear that the customer is not going to meet the criteria, at that time it is a change in estimate and reverse whatever you have already made a provision. For example, in the third quarter, you know pretty well that the customer went to bankrupt, and accordingly he is not going to lift additional quantity to meet the minimum threshold limit. In that case, the third quarter you have additional information. That information has to be applied on a prospective basis in that quarter. You cannot use the information available, which is hindsight information which has been received, to the previous quarter to make retrospective adjustment. So it's a change in estimate on a prospective basis where additional information is available, you adjust the volume rebate. And depreciation in respect of assets which are in existence. So for example, a company has a capital budget where it says that I will invest very huge amount, say for example 100 crores of money is going to be invested in one of the power plant, and based on which my profit, because of the depreciation charge, my profit for the third quarter and fourth quarter will be lower compared to the first quarter and second quarter. So what I will do is anticipated capitalization of property, plant, equipment. Provisionally, I will consider right from the first quarter. Can I do that? When I'm capitalizing it, what happens is every quarter I will have a equivalent depreciation. Whether it is possible, not at all possible, because the depreciation itself, as per Ind AS 16, is applicable only based on a single concept when the asset is uh, ready for the intended use by the management. It's not at all in existence. Where is the question of charging depreciation? Only in the third quarter, the depreciation charge will come, and the fourth quarter will also have an impact because of that usage. I'm launching a new product, incurring huge advertisement, say crores of rupees in paying money to brand ambassador. Maybe I will talk about paying to Amitabh Bachchan, or paying to the regional level superstars like Mohanlal, Mammootty, or Surya, Vijay, Ajay, Ajit, whoever. You are incurring huge advertisement cost, and also huge print and media advertisement is also coming in. Can I defer this because the new product will actually being sold and revenue will be generated in the subsequent quarters? Can I say that it has an economic benefits and I will defer it? It cannot be possible because this type of launching a new product is not meeting the recognition criteria of an asset, and naturally it has to be expensed with in the quarter in which it has been received, or in the period, interim period in which it has been actually spent. You cannot defer over a period of time, smoothen that effect. The deferred revenue expenditure concept is no more available. Inventories Relating to inventories, there could be a possibility that net realizable value during the particular quarter will be lower, but expected market conditions shows in the second quarter the net realizable value will come up. So there is no write down required. Even if I do a write down in the current quarter, in the next quarter immediately it will get reversed. Why should I account for it? If management argues like that, the standard prohibits that argument by saying that when you are deriving your profit or loss for the particular period, all the related expenses, losses has to be accounted for. So when there is a NRV value which is come down, you have to consider that as a write down in the respective period. So that is what interim financial reporting period, you have to apply the measurement principles of NRV and write down. Income tax, interesting point. Here they are saying, if I apply the income tax rates based on what is my income for the particular quarter, it is incorrect. It may lead to total reversal in a subsequent period, not with the respective period. Assuming that in the first quarter, huge profits are coming. In the second and third quarter, they are incurring losses. Fourth quarter, again, profits is coming. If I am applying, say, normal rate of 30% in the first quarter and no taxes because it's losses in the second and third quarter, no losses in the two quarters, it is not a correct accounting principle. And accordingly, there is a specific guidance which has been mentioned, which says that use a weighted average annual rate to make a provision for current tax as well as deferred tax. Okay, this is what the principle which has been given. Let us take one illustration to understand the concept of how income and expenditure should be accounted for and not to be deferred or anticipated. In this case, it's a case of an automotive industry. They are manufacturing automobile parts. Net profit is 20 lakhs for the third quarter. And in that, they have made some adjustment. What they have done is they have identified bad debts or of 1 lakh. But they felt that because one more quarter is also there, 50% will be accounted in the current quarter and 50% in the next quarter. Is it possible? Definitely not possible. You cannot defer the expenditure to a subsequent quarter because it is already incurred loss. Similarly, they have charged additional depreciation because of a change which has happened in the method of depreciation. And they incurred an additional depreciation for the current period. The entire thing has been accounted in the current period and it is not smoothened for the subsequent period. Is it correct? Because whenever you are having a depreciation, it is for the asset in use. And to that extent, if there is an additional depreciation which has to be charged because of the charge in the depreciation method, for example, from cost model to revaluation model, when the entity changes, to that extent, there is an additional depreciation which may come in that is debited in the current period in full, whether it is correct. Yes, it is relating to the particular period. It is correct. And thirdly, they are saying a lot of administrative expenses are incurred in the third quarter, but they believe that the related sales or revenues will happen only in the fourth quarter. So what I will do is I will not recognize any expenditure here. I will defer the entire 5 lakhs to the fourth quarter, making as a compensation or matching and the principles of matching concept. Is it possible? Uh, it is not possible, as we have already seen one of the case like advertisement expenditure. If you have already incurred an expenditure which is not a period cost, you have to expense with immediately. On that basis, what is the adjustments which are required? We are just putting it in our, whatever I have explained, I have put it in theory aspect. You can have a quick look on this when you are revising it. So additional depreciation is correct accounting, deferment of bad debts is incorrect. And when you are talking about the administrative cost which has been incurred, you have to recognize as per para 39 of Ind AS 34, which says that it is possible only if the cost incurred is relating to an asset or anything or period related. Otherwise, costs which are incurred unevenly during the period of an enterprise cannot be deferred. So you have to actually recognize in the period. Therefore, the treatment done on 5 lakh rupees of administrative expenses being deferred to the next period is not correct. Accordingly, the correct profit will be 20 lakhs of profit as reported by the entity. Additional provision required for additional write-off. In fact, I should not use the word provision. Additional uh, write-off required for bad debts. This is what I said. When I am trying to find out that to that extent possible there is no error, even by human nature there could be some errors which may come in. It is not a provision, it is a bad debt. So to that extent that is to be reduced in full, whatever additional number to be done. And the depreciation accounting is proper, so no adjustment is required, but the administrative expenses to be charged as an expenditure for the particular quarter. So the actual interim period profit to be reported as per Ind AS 34 is 14.5 lakhs as against 20 lakhs which has been reported by the entity. For a simple reason, you cannot have a smoothening effect. You have to go by the normal principles of accounting standards, how the asset or liability, income or expenditure should be measured at the annual period based on the accounting policies for the annual period. That should be applied for the current period as well. Certain special consideration we will look into. One is what we are talking about is that stock taking, inventory stock verification, whether physical verification has to be done at every reporting period. Normally, in a reporting period, you publish or you report some interim number which may be limited reviewed and not fully audited. In that case, a physical verification is not warranted. But if it is a full audit of the interim financial statement, the auditor may believe that it's better to have a physical verification done at each reporting period. Normally, it is not required, depending upon the uh, risk involved with respect to inventory physical verification, or risk involved in the sense what is the associated risk with respect to inventory. According to SA 215, if it is a key business driver, the auditor may think about it, doing it when he is actually issuing an audit opinion on the interim financial reporting. Suppose if he is issuing a limited review standards on limited review, SRE 2410 says you are normally conducting an inquiry and trying to identify a corroborative evidence for that particular item. So to that extent, it is not required. A full-fledged stock taking is not required at the interim period. Suppose if you are talking about certain financial as instruments are recognized at fair value. So you should measure the fair value with the same methodology. If what you will be applying at the annual reporting period, it should be applied for every interim reporting period as well. That means fair valuation cannot be avoided at the interim period, saying that it is very cumbersome process, cost involved process. So I will defer the fair value accounting. I will do only at the year end. Is it possible? Not possible. I have to apply the same principle in the interim period as well, unless it is impracticable. So for example, when I'm fair valuing the shares held in an unlisted company and I'm taking fair value through P&L, the previous year audited financial statement may be available. But for the subsequent period, because I am not having any control or significant influence, the unaudited results of the unlisted entities may not be available, or I'm not able to get that information at all. So it is impracticable, which permits you not to do that, and you can do it. Unless it is impracticable, it cannot be done. You have to do fair valuation at every reporting period as well, every reporting interim period as well. If it is impracticable, naturally there is a disclosure requirement which comes as part of the Ind AS 113 fair valuation, fair value measurement standard. Suppose if you have done an impairment loss in the previous interim period with respect to goodwill, can I reverse it because the circumstances now improved? A reversal of provision relating to goodwill or impairment loss recognized for goodwill is prohibited according to Ind AS 36. And to that extent, you cannot reverse even if you have made a provision in the previous quarter. Once gone, it's gone with respect to goodwill. But what happens with respect to any other provision which I have made? For example, I have made a provision with respect to impairment of one particular cash generating unit in the previous quarter. On the third quarter, there is a demand for that. Maybe we can connect it with their live example. Assuming that one pharma industry has felt that it is going to close one particular unit, but subsequently, because of the COVID situation, it can revive that unit and it can manufacture using the existing facility for the personal protective equipments, or you can develop masks, or you can develop certain antibiotics, etc., or vaccine. You can develop or use it. Cash flows can be generated. You are completely having a turnaround in a subsequent period. Whatever impairment loss which I have recognized based on the new scenario, you don't have the requirement for that impairment loss. To that extent, the CGU is having a higher recoverable amount. You have to reverse the provision with respect to impairment loss of PPE or any other asset, but not for goodwill. Similarly, suppose if any investment has been uh, accounted, or any financial asset has been carried at cost. So in that case, you are not supposed to reverse the impairment loss which you have recognized already. So this is what you are supposed to consider. For example, in equity instrument has been recognized at cost. You are not allowed to reverse it specifically as per Ind AS 109. That is the reason why it says in all other cases other than goodwill and equity instrument which has been recognized at cost, you can reverse the impairment loss based on new development happened in the particular quarter. As we have said, the accounting treatment or the measurement principles for current and deferred tax is not based on the tax rate which is effective or substantively enacted, but it should be based on weighted average annual rate, and that rate should be applied for all the quarters. The period in which I have made profit, higher provision will come. The period in which I have made losses, there will be reversal of current tax provision. And in the annual period when you are seeing, it will be equivalent to your normal annual rate of tax which is enacted or substantively enacted. You cannot simply use that in the first quarter where you have made profit and make a full provision. Second quarter, no, because there is a loss, it is not permitted. Let us take one example to understand this concept. What does it talks about is an interesting concept to arrive at a annual general average rate of tax. Okay, annual rate. It's not the quarterly rate. It's a general tax rate for the annual period. Let us understand what is that average general rate of average general annual rate which we are talking about. So company has made a profit of 60,000 in the first quarter and expects a loss of 15,000 in each of the subsequent quarters. Corporate tax rate is 20% for the first 20,000 of annual earnings and 40% for all additional earnings. What is the tax to be provided in each quarter? The first quarter, 60,000 of profit. Second quarter, loss of 15,000. Third quarter, loss of 15,000. Fourth quarter, loss of 15,000. The annual number is 60 minus 45. It's 15,000 is the profit. So how we have to calculate? What it says is that you have to find out what is the average annual income tax rate. What is our expected total income? 60,000 of profit for the particular quarter minus losses of 15,000 each for the 3 quarters results in annual income of 15,000. What is the expected tax rate slab? In this example, we are saying if it is more than 20,000, we have to apply 40% for the additional earnings and 20% for the first 20,000. That's what we are saying. But in a corporate structure, it is a single rate in the Indian Income Tax Act. But for understanding the concept, I am using this slab-based rate. So if we apply this, because the annual expected earnings is only 15,000, which is less than 20,000, first 20,000, only 20%, I applied the 20%. On this 20%, this is my annual income tax rate, which is nothing but my 3,000 divided by 15,000. Not I'm taking the 20% rate. It is simply my expected annual income and what is my tax on the annual income. So annual income is 15,000, on which 20% is applicable. I have calculated 3,000. And what is my annual average income tax rate, which is nothing but the tax which is payable annually divided by the annual total income or expected annual total income. That again gives me 20% because it has not crossed 20,000. If it has crossed, that situation will change. We will have one complicated exercise for the next as a next example. In this example, what I am supposed to do, first quarter I have made a profit of 60,000, but if I apply the simple principle of enacted rate, what I am supposed to do, for 20,000 I have to calculate 20% and balance 40% I have to calculate 30%. But the standard says you cannot apply that. You have to apply your average annual income tax rate, which is only 20% based on the anticipated total income and anticipated total tax payable on an annual basis. So on that 20%, on 60,000, I make a provision for tax expenses in the first quarter, 20% of 60,000, 12,000 rupees. In the second quarter, there is a loss of 15,000. So there is a reversal of tax expenditure to the extent of 3,000 because the excess provision is there. And in the third quarter, again, there is a loss excess provision relating to that particular quarter based on the average annual income tax rate of 20% is reversed. On the fourth quarter also, it is reversed. Net net, what happens if I take a sum total of this? Let us take one more example for us to understand how the tax has been considered, especially when we are talking about various tax slabs, various tax rates which are applicable, how you will determine your weighted average annual income tax rate for the purposes of making the provision. In this example, what we are trying to understand is that the company has a 33 lakhs of annual income, which is estimated, and that includes 8 lakhs of capital gains because capital gains will have a different tax rate. And this income is not happening uniformly. First quarter it is 7 lakhs, second quarter it is 8 lakhs, third quarter, including the capital gains, it is 12 lakhs. And for the fourth quarter, it is 6 lakhs. The tax rates for capital gains is 12%. For other than capital gains, out of 33 lakhs, if we consider the 8 lakhs, balance 25 lakhs, first 5 lakhs, it is 30%. On the balance, it is 40%. So we have slab rate, also a special rate which we have to consider for the purpose of calculation of this tax. Let us understand what para 30 of Ind AS 34 says is that income tax expense is recognized in interim period based on the best estimate of the weighted average annual income tax rate. Weighted average annual income tax rate has to be estimated. On that basis, it has to be accounted for each of the interim period. Suppose if different tax rates are applicable for different categories of income, such as capital gains or other income, you have to apply that particular tax rate for each of the item. On this basis, we will try to identify what we are supposed to do. The estimated annual income given in the example is 33 lakhs, on which capital gains is 8 lakhs because it has to be considered separately. The estimated annual income exclusive of the capital gains is 25 lakhs. This is subjected to tax like 30% on first 5 lakhs, that is 1.5 lakhs, and the balance 20 lakhs, it is 40%, which is 8 lakhs. So on your business income, you are getting 9.5 lakhs according to this. And this 9.5 lakhs is on the estimated income of 25 lakhs, not 33 lakhs, right? So if you consider the tax, estimated tax divided by the estimated annual total income, the weighted average annual interest rate comes to 38%. Using this 38%, for every quarter, we will arrive at what is the tax which is payable. Quarter 1, 7 lakhs is the income. So 38% on that comes to 2.66 lakhs. On the second quarter, it is 8 lakhs, on which 38% comes to 3.04 lakhs. On the third quarter, we have to be a little cautious because 12 lakhs is the total income, out of which it has been mentioned that 8 lakhs is relating to capital gains, which is subjected to special rate of tax. So 4 lakhs at 38% and 8 lakhs at 12%, we get the tax provision to be made for the third quarter, 2.48 lakhs. And for the fourth quarter, estimated income is 6 lakhs at 38%, it is 2.28 lakhs. So the total tax which is payable for various quarters according to this is 10.46 lakhs. The amount to be provided for each quarter is a different number. Now, I normally have a simple process of cross-checking this number. This I have learned during my articles period. Since after a particular point of time, whatever work which we have done is not going to be reviewed by anybody else. So we do some checks and balances. For example, in this case, 10.46 lakhs has been arrived at as the total annual tax payable. And whether this is correct or not, what is the total annual income? On business income, we have to pay 9.5 lakhs, which we have calculated here. On 25 lakhs, first 5 lakhs 30% and balance 20 lakhs at 40%. 9.5 lakhs is what we have seen. In respect of capital gains, it's 8 lakhs, on which 12% is payable, 96 lakhs. Put together, it's 10.46 lakhs. What we have seen here is also 10.46 lakhs. So it gives a very clear proof that whatever we have done based on the weighted average annual income tax rate for each of the quarters in aggregate is equivalent to the total tax payable. Okay, now you understood that we have different categories of income, different rates of income, different slabs of income. Taxes are varying accordingly. How to find out the weighted average annual interest rate? Based on that, you have to apply this for each of the quarters income and recognize this. On an annual basis, the aggregate will be equivalent to the overall number. This is what our understanding of our special consideration which has to be given for provision for current tax. In this example, we have taken that the tax base and book base remaining the same, there is no change, and to that extent, there is no adjustment coming for deferred tax. Otherwise, you have to account for the deferred tax also on the basis of weighted average annual rate of tax for the quarters or the interim periods. In our example, we took quarters. Suppose if it is half yearly, you apply the same process for arriving at what is your tax to be provided for each reporting period. Let's quickly take one more example. In an earlier slide, we have talked about a company has incurred an administrative expenses of 4.5 lakhs and wanted to defer it over a period of the years. Is it possible to spread over the period of years where the economic benefits are coming to that advertisement expenditure? We concluded that it is not possible because it's a sunk cost. To that extent, it has to be charged off. In this example, what they are saying is they have incurred substantial cost for retooling its production line to manufacture new models of cars. In that case, whether the management wanted to spread the tooling cost over the benefit period, say for example, next 1 year or 4 quarters, is it possible, or it has to be expensed within the quarter in which it has been incurred? Here we have to take little bit differently this example. In the previous example, it is a sunk cost, whereas here we are saying it is retooling of the production line. So to that extent, there is an economic benefit which is arising to the entity. Whether that economic benefits fit into the criteria of Ind AS 16. Ind AS 16 says subsequent expenditure in relation to the existing asset can be capitalizable if it brings economic benefits. So if that criteria has been satisfied, this retooling cost of the entire production line, which will benefit over next 1 year, can be treated as part of the property plant equipment, not like what they have mentioned all 4 quarters of the year. No, it should be treated as part or component of the property plant equipment and should be depreciated over the economic useful life. Here in the question they are asking 4 quarter, but over the balance economic useful life it can be amortized as a depreciation charge. Okay. Previous case is a sunk cost, whereas here it may meet the recognition criteria of subsequent expenditure in respect of a property plant equipment as per Ind AS 16. So we are going to Ind AS 16. You may ask, when we are talking about Ind AS 34, why we have to go to Ind AS 16? You, in the starting point itself, we have discussed all the applicable accounting standards will be applied in preparing the interim financial statement. Whichever is applied for the annual period should be used for the interim period as well. So Ind AS 16 is applied for the annual period, so it should be applied for interim period financial statement as well. So accordingly, if the criteria met, we can capitalize and amortize over the period of time. Sometimes whatever we have disclosed earlier, whether the previously reported interim period numbers has to be restated. You remember that if there is a change in accounting policy, you have to apply the principles of Ind AS 8, which requires a retrospective restatement of the financial statement, including if it is going to happen in one particular quarter, then all the period has to be restated. That's what we have seen. Even when a company, first time adopter, is preparing the financial statement, not only the current period, the comparative period is also restated, and the opening balance sheet is also restated according to the new accounting policy, because it requires a retrospective application. The same logic. When we are preparing the financial statement for interim period, we should also have the comparative period number should also be restated as per the new accounting policy. For example, a listed entity is reporting for the first quarter of 2020, that is June 2019, and it has changed an accounting policy in June 2019. Then the comparative figure of June 2018 should be restated for the purposes of giving this number. Similarly, 2019 numbers should also be restated and shown as per, in case if you are showing the previous quarter also as a comparative number. So all the periods presented should be restated, and accordingly interim period numbers should also be restated in case if there is a change in accounting policy. Only one exception which could be there is that if it is impracticable to apply the restatement right from the inception of the particular transaction or the asset, you can go to the earliest date which is practicable to apply the retrospective application. Suppose even if you are concluding the earliest date also it is impracticable, you can apply that on a prospective basis and give the disclosure that it is not practicable, and accordingly it has been adjusted on a prospective basis. No restatement of the previous quarter has been done. This is the requirement for the previous reported interim period numbers in case if there is a change in accounting policy. The standard requires certain disclosures. One of the important disclosure which is asking you is to add in the notes on accounts what are all the significant events or transactions happened during that particular interim period, so that the user will understand whether the particular charge to the P&L or particular income credited to the P&L in the interim period will also going to happen in the next period, or it will stop in that particular period itself. So the examples which has been, or the list which has been given in the standard, which is illustrative and not exhaustive, includes any write down or write back of or reversal of the write down of NRV, net realizable value, in respect of inventory, one basic point on seeing all that list, only if it is a significant event and significant transaction. If it is only some 2,000, 3,000 or 2 lakh rupees, it doesn't make any difference. So if it is material and significant event and significant transaction, you would make the disclosure. Second is, if there is a change in the fair value based on the circumstances in respect of financial asset and financial liability, you have to disclose. In case if there is an impairment loss which has been recognized during the quarter, you have to explain that if it is material. Any correction of prior period errors and any disclosure relating to related party transaction should be mentioned as a significant event and transaction. Any reversal of provisions already made with respect to the restructuring cost as per Ind AS 37, that should also be considered for disclosure if it is significant. Any breach of loan covenants which has not been remediated before the end of the reporting period should be disclosed. Any acquisition of or disposal of property, plant, equipment, for example, a company which is installing 1,500 crore worth of a thermal power plant has to necessarily talk about it, because it is going to have an impact of depreciation for the current quarter as well as on a go forward basis in every quarter. So the user should able to understand that there could be significant impact arising out of this particular transaction. The next possibility could be any transfer from level 1 to level 2 or level 3 inputs relating to fair value measurement hierarchy as per Ind AS 113 should also be disclosed if it is significant to the financial statement. Similarly, any commitment or litigation which has been settled during the period, that should also be disclosed. Any changes in the classification from amortized cost to fair value through P&L or fair value through OCI, vice versa, should be disclosed if that has a significant impact on the current year number. The other disclosures which are required is any changes in accounting policy and methods. If there is a change, that should be mentioned, and what is the nature of the change and what is the effect of the change. Whatever the unusual nature of items which affected assets, liabilities, equity, net income, cash flows, etc. The nature, size, and incidence of the unusual transaction should be disclosed. For example, majority of the companies will be disclosing COVID 2019 impact as part of the disclosure in the fourth quarter of the results. Nature and any change in the amount of estimate which has been made in the interim period and the quantification should be disclosed. Any new debt instruments issued or equity instrument which has been issued or repurchased or they have repaid the debt which is significant, that has to be disclosed as part of the disclosure. Any dividend paid on ordinary shares should be disclosed. Any event which is occurring after the reporting period, that is the interim period, but it may be an adjusting event, you have to disclose it and also make an adjustment for that effect of the adjusting event. If it is a material non-adjusting event, you have to disclose but not to adjust the numbers. If there is any composition of the structure of the entity, for example, who is the management or the promoters, if there is a change in that, it has to be disclosed, including any acquisition of business which has happened as per Ind AS 103, that should be disclosed. For financial instruments, a disclosure relating to fair value measurement as per 113 and 107, which is talking only about disclosures relating to financial instruments, should be disclosed. The disclosure of interest in other entities is covered by Ind AS 112, that should also be disclosed. Continuing the other disclosure, operating segments. If the entity is operating in different segments, 108 is talking about disclosure of segment information. That segment information should also be provided for the interim periods, not only for the year-end annual period, but it should also be given for every interim period. So whatever is the disclosure required as per Ind AS 108 has to be given. In simple terms, what I wanted to reiterate as a point is that whatever is the accounting standard which you will apply for the annual period, that should be applied for the interim period as well. When you are applying that accounting standards, it may require a measurement, recognition, and disclosure requirement, including presentation, that should also be complied with in the interim financial reports. Coming to the last leg of our presentation, we should understand what is the difference between Ind AS 34 and AS 25. Both are talking about interim financial statements. One comment which I have received from one senior chartered accountant is that when I'm explaining this particular slide, I'm little fast. I'm explaining the concept relating to Ind AS in this slide properly, but what is the other concept in AS? I'm actually rushing little bit is what is the comment I have received. Please understand, in the overview of Ind AS, when we started with the first video on Ind AS knowledge series, we said that the practical approach for Ind AS is nothing but there is a presumption that you have a good knowledge of Indian GAAP. That is the presumption which I am having. Because of that presumption, whatever is relating to Ind AS is explained because it's a new concept. What is there in AS is already known to you. So I am ensuring that we are explaining in a faster manner, unless the concept is little to be dealt little in depth. But however, having the feedback, let me try to explain wherever necessary, even the concept relating to AS in this slide. Let's see the difference between Ind AS and AS for our understanding. Ind AS 34 requires a statement of changes in equity, even if you are presenting a condensed interim financial report. And it goes without saying, for a complete set of financial statement which is given for the interim period should consist of statement of changes in equity, because the components of financial statement as per Ind AS is balance sheet, statement of profit and loss account, statement of changes in equity, 4 the statement of cash flows, and 5 is the notes and accounts. Whereas in AS 25 there is no such concept, because the component of financial statement as per AS 25 or IGAAP is only balance sheet, statement of profit and loss account, statement of cash flows, and notes and accounts. The statement of changes in equity is a new concept as per Ind AS 34. So accordingly, AS 25 does not have that concept. Ind AS 34 prohibits reversal of impairment loss, which is in respect of goodwill or equity shares which has been measured at cost. And this impairment loss has been recognized in a previous interim period. Now the improvement is happening. So can I reverse it? Ind AS 34 specifically prohibits reversal of impairment loss if it is relating to goodwill or equity shares which has been measured at cost. Okay. When it comes to AS 25, there is no specific discussion on this particular point. When you are talking about provision with made for impairment loss in the earlier period for goodwill, and there is no concept of equity shares valued at fair value here. It is always at current price or cost price or lower of the fair value. Whichever is lower is accounted in AS 25. To that extent, there could not be any impairment loss which has been taken. But if the subsequently the value improves, you can still take it back to the original cost level. So there is no specific prohibition of reversal of impairment loss in AS 25. You know pretty well, Ind AS prohibits the term extraordinary item, or to treat any item as an extraordinary item. It is prohibited in Ind AS 1, and accordingly the financial statements are prepared under interim financial period in accordance with all the applicable accounting standards which are applied for the annual period. So you should not use any extraordinary item in the interim financial statement as per Ind AS 34. Having said that, even though we have concluded that the unaudited financial statements which is filed with the stock exchanges is not an interim financial statement, the listing agreement has changed the format of the financial statement to exclude extraordinary item because it will be in alignment with Ind AS. So extraordinary item is not forming part of Ind AS at all, and accordingly interim financial statement will not contain or state any item as extraordinary item. Whereas the AS 25, it still has the concept of extraordinary item. So entity can decide a certain item to be disclosed as an extraordinary item, no prohibition as per AS 25. When it comes to method of computation, additional informations are required. Method of computation of, say for example, your tax based on your weighted average general annual rate, etc. Some disclosures are required. There is no such additional disclosure required as per AS 25. Contingent liability and contingent assets both should be disclosed according to Ind AS 34 if they are significant. Because Ind AS 37 talks about contingent liability as well as contingent asset. And contingent liability should be disclosed and has to be assessed for whether any provision is required. In respect of contingent asset, it is not recognized but only disclosed if it is material or significant. That is what Ind AS 37 says. Accordingly, interim financial statement also requires a disclosure of both contingent liability as well as contingent asset. Whereas if you see AS 29, AS 29 requires a disclosure of contingent liability alone. It says categorically contingent assets are neither recognized nor disclosed. Accordingly, when I apply the principles of AS 29 in preparation of the interim financial statement as per AS 25, there is no concept of disclosing the contingent asset as well. Suppose if there is an error or if there is a change in accounting policy, all the previously reported results should also be restated in accordance with Ind AS 8, and that is part of the interim financial statement requirement as well. Whereas no such retrospective adjustment is required as per Indian GAAP, and accordingly AS 25 is also asking for any such, is not asking for any such retrospective restatement of the previously reported numbers. Only under Ind AS 34 we will restate the numbers. This brings us to the end of this session on Ind AS 34 interim financial information. Interim financial reporting. In this session, what we have seen is that what do you mean by interim period, what do you mean by interim financial report, whether that report has to be a full-fledged or a complete set of financial statement for the interim period, or it can also be a condensed set of interim financial report. We have also seen what is the measurement principles or recognition principles for various items, including where the industry is operating on a seasonality business. You cannot smoothen the effect. You have to recognize certain items in accordance with the requirement of Ind AS 34 when it is incurred. You cannot defer. Similarly, you cannot anticipate and recognize the revenue. All those things we have seen from measurement and recognition perspective. We have also seen special considerations relating to certain items like how the income tax has to be accounted for. It is not based on the enacted rate or substantively enacted rate, but we should consider what is the weighted average general annual income tax rate that should be applied for each reporting period. If there is a loss, it is a reversal of the provision. That is the way in which it has to be considered. That also we have seen. And we have also seen what are all the various disclosures required under this particular standard, and when a restatement of previously reported profits or loss or results is required as per Ind AS 34 we have seen. And we have also seen the differences between Indian GAAP AS 25 vis-a-vis Ind AS 34. All those things we have seen. Again, before I close, I want you to uh, have in your mind one important point. Whatever is the accounting policies or measurement principles or recognition principles, disclosure requirements which you are following for the annual financial statement, that should squarely applicable for preparation of interim financial statement as well. This is the basic principle you have to keep in your mind. With that, we close this particular session video on interim financial reporting. I welcome all of you for sending your comments, questions, or uh, the specific situation you wanted to have a clarity, etc., in the YouTube channel itself, so that we will be able to answer this for the benefit of the entire subscribers of our channel rather than only for a particular person who is raising that issue or raising that question. Uh, with that, I take leave from this uh, video, and let us see again with another set of video in our India's knowledge series videos. Goodbye.